So one thing I think we can all agree on is that Xbox is a multi-platform company now. Well, at least most of the time, because sometimes it seems like games aren't exactly multi-platform day and date. When you look at stuff like Xbox and PlayStation 5, for instance. During the last Xbox Developer Direct, which I made a full video on, make sure you guys go check that out, I talked about how Forza Horizon 6, which... man, that game looks freaking awesome. I am still extremely hyped for that game. Is coming to PlayStation 5 later on in the year instead of on May 19th when it comes out on Xbox. But when it comes to Fable, it seems like that's going to be day and date, both Xbox, PlayStation 5. But then you really start to think about it, and there's another outlier in this whole situation, and that is Nintendo Switch 2. Because Nintendo has been getting Xbox games. I mean, you could go back to Pentiment and Grounded coming to the Nintendo Switch. And of course, with the Nintendo Switch 2, we've had games like Tony Hawk 3 and 4 come out day and date. Great version of the game on the Switch 2, at least in my opinion. And then, of course, we have Indiana Jones coming out sometime in the spring. So what is causing this? Why does it seem like some games are day and date, some games aren't really day and date, they come out later on another platform, and why do some games seem to not come out on the Nintendo Switch anytime relative to when the original game releases? Well, we kind of have an answer to it now. I kind of wanted to talk about this because I found this interview to be pretty interesting. I don't feel very well today. A massive snowstorm is coming too, so I mean, that's going to be fun. But I do want to go over this information with you guys because I do feel like it is relevant to what is happening in the current world of video games. So this information is stemming from an interview that just went up over on Games Radar, and Xbox Game Studios head Craig Duncan was the one fielding the questions. And one of the questions that was asked was, well, why do some games come out on day one on PlayStation 5 and Xbox and Nintendo Switch 2? Some games take longer for one system or another, but then they also come out on PC. Like, is it sort of a thing that you're trying to still get people to be interested in the Xbox platform, or is there something more to it? And he had to say the following. And this is a lot of information that he gave. It kind of goes in a roundabout way, but I'm going to read it all, and then we will kind of go over how I feel about it at the end. So he goes on to say the following. There's always development realities about when projects start, how big a team is, and what plans we have at the start of the development. Like you said, when a strategy changes, maybe you've got a plan that exists with the game, and maybe you can adopt that, and maybe you can't. So that's why. And to be clear, this is totally fair feedback. Sometimes we are inconsistent. You may see games in one place, some games in multiple places. Just know that we are going to work on that, and we're going to try and be more consistent with what we do. Now, that was kind of the first part of what he said, and I mean, it does make sense. Like, I think it is a fair assessment. When you look at the Xbox brand and when it comes to their software, we're getting to a point very rapidly, mind you, to where people expect these games to, at the very least, come out on the PlayStation 5 like day and date. Like that's the culture that Xbox has created. You could sit there and say, you know, this, that, or the other when it comes to how, you know, what does that mean for buying Xbox hardware and stuff like that, but that's kind of a story for another day. But then when you involve the Nintendo Switch 2 in the equation, like, it seems like there are, like, more games that aren't announced for the Switch 2 than are. But then you have stuff like Tony Hawk 3 and 4, which was an Xbox game. It's an Activision game. So that came out on day one. You have games like Indiana Jones that are coming out on the Switch 2, which I think is going to be a very interesting litmus test, you know, to see how a game like realistically speaking, Indiana Jones and Resident Evil 9 are like the two games that can really define what the Switch 2 is capable of. Like, if those are awesome ports or even just really, really good ports, like, I think that says a lot about the hardware. But obviously, it's very strange to see these Xbox presentations happen, and then a lot of the times you don't see Switch 2 stuff attached to it. Especially when this seems to be Xbox's MO, We know Xbox wants to put games on the Switch too, but they have been kind of slow to do it. He also said the following as well. So that may lead to a bit of optionality, which is to say, if we're only in a position to release a game on a platform and not have it show up really well, then I think we wouldn't do that. I think we would have a conversation internally and go, hey, unless we could do it really well and do the right thing by those players, then that's what you get into conversations of, well, maybe we can ship it afterwards. Because teams are not a set size. We only have a certain amount of, ultimately, it all comes, yes, we only have a certain amount of, and then it says ultimately. That's not just me messing it up. It all comes down to resource. Not everything is limitless. So we just want to do the best job by each platform, by each game. So in that world, sometimes we'll maintain optionality. Some games we might go PC first, other games we might go console first. Grounded 2 is a really good example of this, which we launched into Game Preview, Steam, and PC initially. So yeah, I think it won't always be the same. So one of the main things that I'm taking away from this kind of goes back to what we talked about, when it comes to the Nintendo Switch 2 and just the dev kit issue. For whatever reason, Nintendo has been weird about dev kits with certain developers, and I don't know why that is. It does seem like that is getting better. But essentially, what I think Xbox is trying to say here is, in a perfect world, they would have a team large enough that would be able to handle all versions of all games. Obviously, something like Tony Hawk 3 and 4 isn't quite as intense as something like Indiana Jones is, or a Forza Horizon when we're talking about a Nintendo Switch 2 version. So things like that, would be easier to bring over, whereas other games are going to be more challenging because of either restrictions or dev kits or just having the manpower to be able to make all of these different versions of games. It is kind of disheartening, though, that it seems like Xbox has been a bit slow to the Switch 2, because, like I said, I would love a Forza Horizon game to come to the Switch 2, and I think it would have been nice to have something like that alongside of, like, the first 6 months of the Switch 2's launch, because there's not really many racing games. Now, we do have games like Grid Legends coming out next week, and then we also have Gear Club Unlimited 3 coming out. But I still feel like there's an opportunity for a game like a Forza Horizon, especially a Forza Horizon 6. Like, why is Forza Horizon 6, if it's coming out on the PlayStation 5 later on in the year, why aren't we announcing a Switch 2 version of it? I guess maybe the one thing that we could be holding on to is, well, maybe it's at the Nintendo Direct. Because we know there's going to be a Nintendo Direct sometime happening in February. And can that be where Xbox finally starts to show off everything coming to the Switch 2? They show off Forza Horizon 6 is coming out later in 2026 to the Switch 2. Maybe Fable. Really, the options are endless as far as what Xbox games, pending they don't get canceled, could end up coming to the Nintendo Switch 2, especially if they're able to optimize performance for things like Indiana Jones. It's really just going to take some time, and really, it can be, annoying to have to wait for it, because then people are like, if you're really diehard in those Nintendo streets and people are like, oh, look at the Xbox game skipping Nintendo, and then people have to like defend it and stuff like that. Thankfully, I'm not a part of that. I don't really care what games come to other platforms, but it would be nice to see more Xbox presence, and maybe we see it at the upcoming Nintendo Direct, or I don't know, maybe some games just end up skipping the Switch too. But let me know in the comments section down below, what do you think about this information? Do you foresee there being some Xbox games at the upcoming Nintendo Direct? We assume something is going to happen in February, and I think that is a good potential of it happening. And what specific Xbox games do you want to see? Like, I'm going to buy Indiana Jones just because I am curious to see how that game performs on the Switch too. And, I would buy a Forza because, once again, I feel like there are people, that's kind of a style of game that there's not really anything filling that void on the Switch 2 as it stands right now. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully I start feeling better soon. Give me some well wishes, or I don't know, say some mean things to me. As long as you engage, dude, that's all that matters at the end of the day. And my printer is making noise now. I think it's possessed by the devil. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.